Good evening, everyone. I am Laura Zielonka, the Finance Director for the City of Winter Garden. We put together an informative presentation to go over some of the questions that we thought you might ask, to go over what our thought process was and how we got here. So this presentation will review the following. We'll go over what government services are and how they're funded, what a fire assessment fee is, why are we considering a fire assessment, and findings from the fire assessment fee study. So what are government services? The City of Winter Garden has 3 funds. We have the general fund, enterprise funds, and other funds. And in the general fund, these are essential public services that are mostly funded by ad valorem revenues and state revenues. The enterprise funds run more like businesses. Those are the utilities fund, solid waste fund, and stormwater fund. Some people have asked, since you reduced or eliminated recycling, can't you use those savings to pay for the gap in the general fund? And you can't do that. The enterprise funds have their own specific financial statements, and they're based on user fees. So as you use water and sewer, as you use garbage, those revenues can only pay for those services. And same with the general fund, you can't use taxes to pay for solid waste salaries. They have to be completely separate. So as we said, the general fund is the operational backbone of the local government, and it supports the essential services. What are those services that we provide? We provide public safety, the fire and police, the general government, which is John's, city manager's office, city clerk, finance, human resources, legal, cybersecurity, planning and development. General fund also pays for culture and recreation, which provides our parks and recreation programs and community events. Transportation, which includes the maintenance of your roads and your sidewalks and traffic control systems, and economic development and human services, which encompasses community relations, fostering community engagement, and well-being. Here's the chart that John was alluding to. This is how the city provides the funding allocation in the general fund. And as you can see, public safety is the main source of the allocation at over 56% of the total budget. So that's how we perceive it, and we wanted to sort of take a poll, and it looks like, I would say, public safety is probably one of the highest in culture and recreation, maybe? So that's interesting.
Transportation.
Yeah, transportation, okay, so in general government, it's 14%, 9.5% for culture and recreation, 6.6% for physical environment, which is the city's fleet and facilities and our cemetery. We have to have debt transfers and the CRA transfer, which is the city's contribution into the CRA. Transportation, which is our roads and sidewalks, and economic development. So some people have asked, well, my taxes pay for the fire rescue. Sort of, yes. The property taxes make up a portion of the general fund revenues. Fire rescue department is part of the general fund. So the general fund pays for all the services that we just talked about, and those revenues fully encompass all of those services. Is how we allocate those funds. The property taxes that we pay, that residents and businesses pay, generates approximately 41% of the total revenues for the general fund. So you can see in this pie graph, this is this year's budget, proposed budget, that we currently have without any adjustments is $69.8 million. 41% of those revenues come from ad valorem taxes, 11.9% for utility and communication taxes, permits, fees, and special assessments make up approximately 9.5%. Intergovernmental revenues are the state revenues. Those are the half-cent sales tax and municipal revenue sharing. We also have charges for services and investments in earnings. So what is a fire assessment? Not a lot of people know the exact terminology of what a fire assessment is. It's a non-ad valorem fee that's put on the property bill, and it's based on property use. So it's based on a residential dwelling unit, it's based on commercial, industrial, and the revenues are restricted solely for fire protection, for police equipment training, or fire protection for personnel, equipment training, and capital costs. The fire department's primary function and goal is to respond to fire and medical incidents. within critical time frame to save property and lives. They're available for service for a 24-hour basis for 7 days a week, and they help reduce insurance premiums and increase property values. So why are we considering a fire assessment? I pay taxes. Why is there a need for alternative funding? There is a structural imbalance that is reflecting rising service costs, which includes staffing, equipment, and operations that are outpacing the growth in revenues. Fire and police expenses for personnel and operating costs are approximately $36.8 million, with police at $22.2 million and fire at $14.6 million. Property taxes bring in approximately $28.4 million, which accounts for only 77% of the total needed for fire and police. The fire assessment would help fund the gap of $8.4 million. Yes, there are other general fund revenues. However, some of those revenues are considered alternative sources, with many of them either being limited in scope, unstable, or subject to restrictions. We like to show this chart because not a lot of people realize where your taxes go. When you pay your property tax bill, 41% of your taxes go to schools, 28% goes to the county, 28% goes to the city, and 3.5% goes to special districts, which is the St. Johns River Water Management District type entities. So the municipality, which is City of Winter Garden, receives 28% of your total tax bill, and that pays for your fire, your police, your roads, your sidewalks, your parks, your recreation, and all the other governmental supporting services. The city's current tax rate is at 4.5 mils. We've had it at 4.5 mils for the past 8 years, and it's also one of the lowest in Central Florida. This slide shows the imbalance between what the city collects in ad valorem revenues per resident and compares it to what the cost is to provide services per capita. So while the ad valorem property tax revenues have increased modestly per capita, they're not keeping pace with the rising costs of providing those services per capita. The per capita costs are rising due to inflation, labor costs, equipment and technology needs, and especially in areas like public safety and infrastructure. So this graph shows the property tax to fire and police costs. This slide illustrates that the combined costs of fire and police services have consistently been higher than the city's tax revenues, but the difference became more pronounced in 2023. In 2023, the gap that the city collects in property taxes and what it spends on public safety grew significantly, signaling increased pressure in the general fund. So why is that? In 2015, the cost of an engine was $448,000 and the cost of a police car was $34,000. Now in 2026, for the same vehicles, the same engine, same police car, it's $1.1 million for a fire engine and $74,000 for a police vehicle. And this graph shows the general fund operating revenues to general fund expenditures. By operating revenues, these are steady sources of funding, which includes taxes, charges for services, and permits and fees and special assessments. It does not include the unpredictable revenue sources such as investment earnings, sales of assets, or contributions. We wanted to show this slide because you can see the imbalance from 2017 to 2023. The revenues were slightly greater than the expenditures. In 2023, the expenditures started outpacing the revenues and trends. This is due to inflation. Inflation has steadily increased from 1998 through 2020, and then as we all know, after 2020, inflation just started skyrocketing, and we all felt the pressures of the inflation. But I think what's had more of an impact is minimum wage. Minimum wage is a little bit more permanent as far as what the personnel costs. From 2000 to 2020, increases in minimum wage were modest and driven by market demand. However, beginning 2021, the pace has increased and accelerated significantly due to state mandated wage laws. As minimum wage rises, the city must adjust wages, not only for entry-level positions, but also for other roles, so you don't have the ripple effect of compression. Continued Exponential increases in labor costs not only offsets the corresponding revenue growth, but it also could affect the long-term health of the city. This is also what John touched on before, which I think most people have seen in the news. We are trying to attract and retain quality staff as a priority, but there are competitive salaries and benefits. It's essential for us to be competitive to be able to recruit and retain skilled employees, especially in the services of fire and police. These positions demand high levels of training, certification, and readiness, and there's a strong competition with qualified personnel with a limited pool. So we are competing with larger, well-funded agencies, and Winter Garden must continuously evaluate our compensation structure to avoid losing experienced staff. This graph we show almost every year. We're a little proud of it, so I'll go a little bit more into detail. So this shows the local municipalities and other municipalities our size. And what you're seeing here is full-time equivalent employees, which is budget employees per 1,000 population. That means that's the number of employees that we have on staff per every 1,000 of our citizens. And as you can see, we are the lowest in our area of like-size pool. So among other similar-sized municipalities, Winter Garden is the lowest number of full-time FTEs, demonstrating our commitment to lean operations and fiscal responsibility. It also reflects a fiscally conservative approach by carefully managing taxpayer dollars while minimizing administrative overhead. Even with fewer employees per capita, we still continue to deliver outstanding service levels across all departments, which includes fire, police, parks, and public services. Our staffing levels also show that we maximize the productivity and effectiveness of our workforce, doing more with less while still meeting and often exceeding community expectations. We also focus on strategic staffing, not overstaffing. Rather than simply growing our workforce, the city focuses on strategic staffing decisions to ensure resources are allocated where they're most needed. So one of the benefits of implementing a fire assessment, it provides dedicated and stable funding and ensures a consistent revenue stream for fire services, regardless of economic cycles.